stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item A2, roll call, please.
Chair Twait,
Here.
Vice Chair Dothett,
Here.
Commissioner Woodard,
Here.
Commissioner Greenberg is absent, Commissioner Fikes,
Here.
Commissioner Halstead,
Here.
and Commissioner Askin is absent. You have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Item A3, agenda approval. Commissioner Halstead.
I move we approve the agenda with the addition of the laydown.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any objections? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Item A4, consent agenda. Commissioner Halstead.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
And a second.
I'll second.
Any objections? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. Item C, scheduled public comment. We have none. Item D, unscheduled public comment. Anyone wishing to speak to an item not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we will move on then. We have no items under consideration of plats. Item F is public hearings. We have just one tonight. F1 is Resolution PZ 2022-11. It's an application for a conditional use permit for a daycare center for the property described as Lot 1, Block G, Woodland Subdivision Part 1, located at 502 Ash Avenue, Kenai. Application submitted by Stephanie Nella Lenzini LeBaron. All right. Can I get a motion, please? Commissioner Halstead.
I move we approve Resolution PZ 2022-11, application for conditional use permit.
And a second.
Okay, I'll second application for PZ 2022-11.
All right, Mr. Foster, staff report.
Thank you, Chair Twait and fellow commissioners. Staff's presentation is on Resolution PZ 2022-11. That's a conditional use permit for a daycare center at 502 Ash Avenue. The applicant is Stephanie Nella Lenzini LeBaron at 502 Ash Avenue. We can see the subject parcel here on the aerial map. The lot size is approximately 0.34 acres. The existing zoning is suburban residential. The current land use is a single-family dwelling, and the land use plan is for suburban residential. Kenai Municipal Code 1420-230B2 provides that a daycare of no more than 8 children under the age of 12, including children related to the caregiver, is allowed with a home occupation permit. The applicant wishes to operate a daycare with a maximum of 12 children, therefore requiring a conditional use permit for a daycare center. Daycare center means an establishment where childcare is regularly provided for children for periods of less than 24 hours, including the building housing the facility and adjoining areas, and where tuition fees or other compensation for the care of the children is charged. Here we have a layout of the home for the daycare. Staff's analysis, Kenai Municipal Code 1420-150E, review criteria for conditional use permits. Pursuant to KMC 1420-150A, the intent of a conditional use permit is to allow some uses that may be compatible with the designated principal uses in specific zoning districts, provided certain conditions are met. KMC 1420-150E, conditional use permits review criteria, states 6 conditions that the Planning and Zoning Commission must deem to exist when establishing findings prior to issuing a conditional use permit. We're going to review these criteria now. Criteria 1, the use is consistent with the purpose of this chapter and the purposes and intent of the zoning district. Staff's response is the proposed daycare meets the intent of the suburban residential zone to provide for medium density residential development in areas which will be provided with common utility systems. The specific intent in establishing this zone is 1, to separate residential structures to an extent which will allow for adequate light, air, and privacy. and 2, to prohibit uses which would A, violate the residential character of the environment, and B, generate heavy traffic in predominantly residential areas. The existing home is consistent with the intent of the Suburban Residential District by preserving a medium-density residential neighborhood with a site design that provides light, air, and privacy between neighboring parcels via lot setbacks, trees, lawn, and backyard fencing. While a daycare center would generate consistent vehicle trips, it would likely not generate heavy traffic. KMC 1422 land use table permits a single dwelling on a suburban residential property. The land use table provides that a daycare centers are a conditional use, therefore a conditional use permit must be granted for the operation of a daycare center. Criteria 2, the economic and non-economic value of the adjoining property and neighborhood will not be significantly impaired. Staff's response is the parcels located to the north and west of the subject property contain single-family dwellings. The parcels located to the east and south are vacant parcels with trees and wetlands. The economic and non-economic value of adjacent property should not be significantly impacted by this change. Criteria 3, the proposed use is in harmony with the comprehensive plan. Staff's response is the land use plan from the 2016 comprehensive plan proposes a suburban residential land use for this neighborhood. The suburban residential land use classification is defined in the comprehensive plan. Suburban residential is intended for single-family and multifamily residential uses that are urban or suburban in character. The area will typically be developed at a higher density. Lots are typically smaller, and public water and sewer services are required or planned. Some developments may be required to construct streets to a paved standard, and larger subdivisions may be required to provide sidewalks and public areas. Parks and open space land uses may be considered appropriate. The subject parcel has similar land use, lot size, and orientation, city water and wastewater connections, and medium density as neighboring properties. Ash Avenue is paved with no sidewalks. The comprehensive plan has goals to support businesses and economic development to provide a high quality of life within the city. Below are specific goals and objectives from the comprehensive plan that support this application. Goal 1 of the comprehensive plan is to promote and encourage quality of life in Kenai. Q4, promote the siting and design of land uses that are in harmony and scale with surrounding uses. The single-family home where the daycare operations would take place is in harmony with the site design and layout of the suburban residential zoning district. Goal 2 of the comprehensive plan is to provide economic development to support the fiscal health of Kenai. Daycare centers contribute to the economic vitality of the city by providing for child care during working hours for parents. The availability of child care can have a significant impact on the ability of parents to maintain employment. Criteria 4, public services and facilities are adequate to serve the proposed use. Staff's response is the residence located at 502 Ash Avenue is connected to city water and sewer services, has access to natural gas, electricity, and telephone services. Ash Avenue is a paved road which is maintained by the city of Kenai, and the operation of a daycare will not have an impact on these services. Criteria 5, the proposed use will not be harmful to the public safety, health, or welfare. Staff's response is the operation of a daycare center will not be helpful to public safety, health, or welfare. Staff believes that services are available to adequately serve this use and would not be harmful to public safety, health, or welfare of the community. Criteria 6, specific conditions deemed necessary, and we're going to go over those recommended conditions now. City staff find the applicant meets the criteria for issuance of the conditional use permit as set forth in subsections E1 through E6 of Kenai Municipal Code 1420-150, and hereby recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve the conditional use permit application subject to the following conditions. Condition 1, further development of the property shall conform to all federal, state of Alaska, and local regulations. Condition 2, a yearly conditional use permit report must be submitted to the City of Kenai prior to the 31st of December of each year. Condition 3, biennial fire inspection must be completed by the fire marshal for the City of Kenai. Condition 4, the applicant will meet with city staff for on-site inspections when requested. Condition 5, if there's a change of use of the above described property, a new conditional use permit must be obtained pursuant to 1420-150I5. And Condition 6, pursuant to KMC 1420-150I2, this permit shall expire automatically upon termination or interruption of the use for a period of at least 1 year. That concludes my presentation. Happy to stand for questions.
All right, thank you. At this time, we'll let the applicant come forward and give a presentation. Anything else that you might want to add that Mr. Foster didn't? So if we can get you to come forward, name and address for the record, and then we'll let you go ahead.
Do I push this?
It's on, yep.
Okay. My name is Stephanie Nella Lenzini LeBaron, and I live at 502 Ash Avenue. Am I good to go? Okay.
Good to go, yep.
Well, as Mr. Foster covered most of the important things, having a daycare I think is very vital for the area and for Kenai alone. There aren't many childcare opportunities, and as prices keep rising, more people have to go to work, and childcare is very, very limited. So we already have a wait list acquired, and people are ready to send their kids to a qualified daycare center, especially one that is going to be state licensed, which is even more difficult to come by. So yeah, I think that it would be very, very vital for the community as well as the economic growth, as people will be able to go back to work. And I already have 2 full-time employees lined up, so they will be receiving paychecks. We'll be paying our taxes and our insurances and all the likes and contributing to the economic growth of Alaska and Kenai.
All right. Oh, I think, well, should we take questions now? I guess we can take a couple now. Then we'll probably have you come back maybe at the end too if there's any further questions that develop along the way. But Commissioner Fikes.
Thank you. Through the chair, just what does a typical operating day look like? What would the closing be or the opening times be?
We're 9 to 5 typically. We do have hours outside that if families need it. My goal is to be as flexible as possible. Right now we have a student who's signing up to start attending at 7:30 a.m., but then he takes the bus midday and he gets picked up at 5, so he's there during normal, or the same amount of hours, but there earlier. So flexibility to me is key. The permit allows, or the license I think allows me to go from 5 a.m. until 10 p.m. I think. I can't quite remember, but I definitely will not be operating within those
Thank you.
extreme hours.
Commissioner Halstead.
Have you been operating previously with 8 kids?
No. Well, I can only have up to 4 right now, not including my child.
Okay.
Because the licensing process is not finished.
Okay. So, but you have been operating with 4 then?
I've been operating with 2.
Okay. You could have up to 4.
I could have up to 4.
So how long have you been doing that?
We started in May, mostly. I've been watching children on and off for probably a year at this, 9 months at this address. I lived in Nikolaevsk before that, so a little time before there as well, since I had my son pretty much and stopped going to work. Before that, I worked with the school district, so I'm accustomed to having a full classroom under my charge.
Commissioner Woodard.
Do you have any fencing around your house?
I do. I have a backyard fence that goes probably 20 yards by, or 20 feet by 10 feet that blocks in some of the backyard, and then the rest is open.
Okay, we'll let you sit down for now.
Okay.
And then we'll open it up for any other people who would like to testify.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Bob Malloy. I'm a resident of 513 Ash Avenue, and I'm going to request that you exercise your discretion to vote no on this conditional use permit for commercial daycare center business in our residential subdivision. There are already several child care home occupation type businesses in the subdivision, so the subdivision isn't lacking child care. And if this was a home occupation, I probably wouldn't be here. The 2 children on the corner really haven't been a problem, but when you're talking to 12, that's where I get to disagree with the staff's analysis and recommendations on criteria 1, 3, and 5. What staff focuses on the existing home being consistent, but not the commercial use that's going to happen there in this location where, if you look at the map, you know, there's Ash Avenue flowing into Fifth, and that's one of the two main corridors for traffic out of the subdivision into North Forest and Fourth, and then to the Kenai Spur Highway. And there's already a lot of children in the neighborhood at several other houses along Ash that play in the streets, and they also play in Fifth. And people haul, you know, there's only one stop sign when you're coming south, and you're already past that house before you come to the stop. And in the other direction, there's no stop sign. So, you know, a commercial use for 12 children is going to add a lot of more traffic. That's where I disagree with staff too. It's going to generate heavy traffic. There's already heavy traffic in that artery that's dangerous to children. You know, they're out there with their bikes and everything. They play basketball in the street, sports and everything like that. And when you add 12 more in the front, you know, with multiple daily stops, that really is a public safety issue too, you know, which is criteria number 5. This is not a good location for a commercial operation for childcare. You know, if it's also not really in harmony with Goal 1 of the comprehensive plan, because there are other daycare home occupations in this area. Now, I only found out about this application within a few days, so I didn't have time with my other operations to check into how many home occupations there actually are there. But there's also some that I think that are like not licensed or don't have a home occupation with the city too. So you know, I would ask you respectfully not to allow what's really a commercial business in our neighborhood. We've never had a commercial business in our neighborhood before. You know, again, if it was a home occupation, maybe that would be different. Haven't been concerned about the 2 additional children, but when you add 12, that's going to be a problem with the additional traffic. So I'd ask you for you to deny it. Thank you.
Stay seated. Anyone have any questions? I have a question. The number 12 comes up. We certainly, and you probably know, could enforce conditions to limit it to something less than 12. Is there a number that you think would be acceptable or adequate in your opinion?
So, you know, this is a home occupation is really different than a learning center commercial type business. So I would say if it was a home, like the existing 2 children weren't a problem, you know, and if it was a home occupation, you know, that's, again, that would be a little different. It's not like a learning center and everything. But just because of that location, if you add more children, it's going to be a problem. I mean, that's where they collect to play. There's the trail that's out there and stuff like that, and there's going to be a lot more traffic. So you know, it's a big step up in use in the area, and so, you know, that's why we're opposed to seeing that happen there. You know, look, the applicant could get space like other commercial daycare centers in the core. You know, there's several that are in the commercial areas of the city. You know, one not very far from here. You know, another one next to the cleaners. So.
You good?
Yeah, I'm good. Sorry, I get
my right hand man. My right hand man's on his way with it.
Right. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. So it's not as if it's not as if the residents already have options, you know, within the subdivision itself as well as elsewhere. And you know, in my view, this really doesn't you know, meet the criteria of as far as especially safety. And so you know, I'd ask you for your discretion to say no on this application.
All right. Now, anyone else have any questions? All right, we're good. Thank you. Is that right? There would have been 8 of us living in it. There you go.
Thank you. I'm Christine Schmidt. I live at 513 Ash Avenue, and I handed out a aerial photo from the Kenai Peninsula Borough website. Our house is the top of the page in yellow, and then the subject parcel is in the bottom of that little triangle there. I was very disappointed that the staff report was so one-sided. There was no consideration of the impact of this business on the historical residential neighborhood. Our neighborhood's been around since the 1960s. It's a very heavily populated residential neighborhood with very small lots. So business, things like this have a big impact on our neighborhood because the lots are so small. And also, it ignores the comprehensive plans, focus on quality of life. And living in a residential neighborhood and having a business next door or down the street is not giving us the same quality of life that we've been used to in the last, well, we've lived there since 1985, so the last almost 40 years. Also, this property businesses in our subdivision are prohibited by our covenants. Our covenants restrict property to single-family residential use. That's the entire subdivision. And so I know that there's, in the past, the city would not give people an opportunity to have a conditional use permit that violated subdivision covenants. I know that the current philosophy is that shouldn't matter, but in my opinion, the commission should not give a permit to violate subdivision covenants. And this business is not appropriate for this location. The commercial use is not consistent with the purposes and intent of a suburban residential zone, which is supposed to be for suburban residential use, not businesses, especially of this size. Oh, I tried. I think you can see a major concern is the problem of the location with the traffic. Fifth Avenue and Ash Avenue are the two of the busiest streets in our subdivision, and hundreds of cars go by there every day. And adding 12 people, 12 more cars several times a day, plus 2 employees, is really going to make a huge difference. Although the applicant says that people can park in the driveway to drop their kids off, their driveway is very small and could probably only take 2 cars. So that means other people are going to be parking on the street and be in the way of, it's a very narrow street. It's only 30 feet wide, and they're going to be in the way of all the other traffic. It's a 60-foot right-of-way, but the built street is only about 30 feet wide. Fifth Avenue is even narrower. It's barely, just a little bit over a 1-lane road. And also, it's very dangerous that they have the kids playing out in the front yard because cars come roaring around the corner on Fifth Avenue, and there's no stop sign, so they can just, you can see that there's a curb there that's somewhat dangerous. Also, there's no other large businesses in Woodland subdivision like this, and this would open the door to other large businesses, and we're concerned about that. I want to also point out that there actually are a lot of daycare places in our neighborhood under the home occupation, and also people that have daycare businesses that don't get a permit, even when they should. I think that this lady here mentioned that she was already in business, and I don't believe she has a home occupation permit. And also, right next door to us, we have a daycare place that has about 4 kids a day. And when I was working at home during the pandemic, it was pretty hard to work 4 screaming kids next door, I tell you. So I think that's a real issue, the noise as well. So, thank you.
Anyone have any questions? So I'm going to talk about the covenant issue real quick. Do the covenant state no home occupation businesses too, or is it just?
Well, it doesn't limit that, but nobody in our subdivision has, pitched a fit over home occupations as long as they're fairly quiet,
Do you know what the covenants actually state?
Yeah, they say they're limited to single-family residential use.
Okay.
All the properties,
Okay.
except for a couple that are.
Okay, great. Anybody else? Oh, Commissioner Doffett, Vice Chair Doffett.
We get a lot of reference to covenants and restrictions. Is there a current and active homeowners association to enforce covenants and restrictions in your neighborhood at this time?
Yeah, there has been in the last 40 years.
So there is you pay dues and there's an active homeowners association?
No, there's not an active homeowners
Okay.
association, except for the individual lot owners, but people have, in fact, enforced the covenants separately. I'm an attorney, so people come and visit me all the time, and I help them to enforce the covenants in our neighborhood and others in this town.
Okay. I was just curious
Yeah,
if there was an
sure.
active homeowners association.
No, there has never been.
Thank you.
Well, there was actually, but it's been on and off over the years. Right now, it's not, it's off, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else that hasn't testified yet? Okay, if you'd like to come back up. I would just wait till you get up there because that microphone will pick you up a lot better that way.
Should I restate my name?
You should, yep.
Okay. Stephanie Nella Lenzini LeBaron at 502 Ash Avenue. The first gentleman spoke to problems being with traffic, and that was the first thing that I would like to address. We are a corner lot. We're on 5th Avenue and Ash Avenue, right there on the corner. There's a walking trail right next to us, and there's a little parking cul-de-sac for that walking trail. As he mentioned, there's a lot of kids playing in the neighborhood because it's a very family-friendly neighborhood. There are a lot of kids playing in this neighborhood. There's going to be a lot of kids playing in the neighborhood. I don't think adding more kids to the neighborhood is going to be harmful for children, having more peers to play with. But on top of that, I would never be so negligent as to let 12 children roam around the streets. I do have a backyard. I have a significant backyard in which I plan on using for the children. That being said, I plan on getting a permit and a license to be able to hold 12 children, but I do not plan on ever admitting 12 children full-time. I will restrict my admittance to 5 children, is what I'm planning for right now, but I want leeway room so that I can have children for families. I can have room for children for families that need emergency drop-off care. So I won't have 12 children regularly, especially not just playing in the streets or the front yard. In terms of traffic, it's a subdivision. There's traffic around 9 and 5 in the morning. We operate within normal hours. I'm not going till 10 p.m. Nobody's knocking on my door driving at 5 a.m. In terms of noise, it's a family-friendly neighborhood. Kids are going to be playing out in the street. It's just what it is. It's a very family-friendly neighborhood, and that's where the wave of this neighborhood is going, and I think that adding more children to it is not going to lessen or increase volume, or stopping the permit would not lessen the volume, since there's always going to be children playing on these streets. What was the next point? I think it was the driveway. Yes, we have a very large driveway. We can hold up to 5 cars in our driveway. In terms of parking, parents are there for maybe 5 minutes picking up their kids, not a significant amount of time, not an amount of time where it would be difficult for people to come in and out of the neighborhood. In terms of having people in my home right now, I'm staying within the license of Alaska. They told me, my license officer told me that I could admit up to 4 children at a time right now without being licensed. So I don't believe I'm breaking any rules. If I was supposed to do something with the city of Kenai, I don't believe that that's something I was supposed to do, but I apologize and I will pay for that permit if I'm supposed to. I actually just learned about the conditional use permit not too long ago. Let's see if there were any other areas to rebuttal. I just overall think that it would be negligent if the city decided that more childcare is not necessary. We are a residential building. We are in a family-friendly neighborhood. Yes, there's other daycares, but I don't think any are licensed. And if they are, then it's not many of them. So they can only hold up to 4. Like I said, I already have a wait list. And the fact that we are a learning center means that I get to bring more to the city of Kenai and to the families that I would be welcoming and servicing. I'm a master's student studying to be a BCBA, and so I'm very behavior oriented, and I'm working with children on better social behavior. And I need these hours to fulfill my master's degree, and that's why we are more of a learning center. I'm not going to be a typical daycare where they come in and eat macaroni and cheese and watch movies all day, and we let them out in the front yard and run around and scream and yell. It will be a learning center where we will have structure, and children will come to do preschool readiness, kindergarten readiness, catch up on skills that they lack during the school year. As I've worked in education for over a decade, I have a very good understanding of special education and of teaching children and how to not let them run rambunctious through the streets. So yes, that's my rebuttal. I think I hit all the points.
Okay. I'm going to start off with a question, I guess. And I've driven by that place probably several hundreds of times probably, but I can't get a visual of it. So is the lower level, is it basement level? Is that what I'm?
It's a split level.
Split level. So the lower level, which will be the daycare center, is there, so naps will be taken. Do we need to, or have we looked at egress windows and things of that nature as far as that's all been taken care of?
The fire marshal approved which rooms.
Already been
sleeping rooms.
done, okay. And that, I guess, covers that question I had. I'll see if anyone else wants to go next. I got a few other ones, but anyone else have any questions? No? So you mentioned that you won't be taking 12, but 12's the number the application. Is that the next criteria that the licensing board has, or is that your choice to pick 12? I mean, if you're not going to use 12, is there a way to? Because that's going to be my next question. Is okay? Because I asked Mr. Malloy what would be a number that he would be happy with. If it was going to be less than 12, what number do you realistically think you're going to be seeing there?
Mr. Malloy was talking about the 2 children, and legally, without a license, I can have up to 4 children, not including mine. So right away, I'm always going to have 5 children in the house, with or without a license. That being said, I think that a comfortable number for me personally, considering I will have at least 1 full-time employee with me, would be around 8. And then the rest of the 4, my goal is 5, but as I said, we already have a wait list. So I'm willing to do up to 8 full-time. But then the last 4 slots would be given for families who need emergency drop-in care. They have to bring the baby to the doctor and they don't have anyone to watch their 3-year-old. They can come to me for a few hours or things like that. Their nanny called in sick and they really got to go to work. They can bring their child to me. So things like that. So I think 8 would be our hover number of most typical use. Now, that being said as well, I don't need a conditional use permit for 8 children. So I would just change my license to accommodate that. And so I would also automatically already have 8 where I wouldn't need a conditional use permit.
Okay. And I will just state that I've got a gentleman that I'm hiring that will come to work as soon as he finds a daycare. And he's on a waiting list, so I do know that is an issue for sure. So I appreciate that.
I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
I have one more point. As a licensed daycare center, I will be able to accept the child care assistance program, which is highly needed in the community. Most of the places, they're not licensed, so it's private pay. And so by being able to provide the child care assistance program as a payment option, I will be helping the lower income families of the community.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. You're good. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify to PZ 2022-11? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission for discussion. Commissioner Halstead.
All right, everyone get comfortable. I've got a few things to say here. So first off, I would like to say that I definitely think daycare is a great idea and definitely needed. I struggled with my kids getting daycare, and I'm all for a daycare by every means. I'm also in that neighborhood, and I've got what I believe is an unlicensed daycare that runs as my neighbor, and it is the worst thing that I've ever experienced in all of the places that I've lived. So it hits a very, very sore spot for me. And in that, I see there's a couple of additions with the criteria where I feel that size would not meet the criteria 2 being a non-economic value. I think a large daycare in that area definitely disturbs the neighborhood, disturbs the neighbors. I don't think it has anything to do with traffic. I think your traffic's fine. I'm very familiar with that area. I think that little turnaround area is perfect for pickup, drop off. It sounds like you're not playing in the front yard. You've got space in the backyard. So I think on that side, that's not the issue so much as a potential of 12 screaming kids while I'm trying to work from my house. Even though you're monitoring, you're doing, maybe I'm a little grouchy when it comes to kids, but I think if I'm trying to work from home and I got kids in the backyard being kids, then that makes it hard for me as a neighbor. Criteria 3, harmony with the comp plan. Again, I think it's just that volume winds up being an issue for me. When I asked you about the kids, and I think this is kind of a point that we're all kind of thinking about, it's the number that's getting us. You're already taking care of 2 kids. Unfortunately, there's not enough. You started in May, if I'm understanding correctly, that to kind of see how well it is with working out. If you were, if you'd been there for a year and you were watching kids for a year, then basically we kind of see how that's progressing. And obviously you can handle it. There's not issues. There's not a whole bunch of neighbors here that are necessarily saying that it's been an issue yet. Which makes me wonder about that home occupation permit versus the conditional use permit. And especially if you're okay with 8, it might be smarter to do that home occupation permit as a thought. Additional, again, when it comes to enforcing the covenants, being in that neighborhood, with my issues that I've had, my covenants are not, they don't mean anything. And there's no kind of enforcement that I've seen happen, no matter, I'm on the board, and I still can't get anything enforced for my neighborhood, whether it's garbage in the front yard or anything like that. So I don't think that's an issue there. So my thought is, now that I'm talking, if we did a conditional use permit for 8 that could be modified the following year, we could see how well 8 does, and it doesn't disturb the neighborhood, and we don't get the next year the influx of neighbors that are complaining because there's been 8 kids. Would it be then that we could say, okay, obviously you can handle 8, now let's push it up to 12? And on top of the conditional that permit, I would add an additional stipulation or thing that there would be the ability in an emergency type situation to add the additional children in there to make it 12. So you are licensed full-time for 8 in an emergency type situation, which would be like a 3-day or 4-day period, or reasonably whatever we could say, then you could bump it up to 12 per your license, but with the understanding that 90% of the time you're going to be running with 8 kids or less. Those are my thoughts.
Okay, a lot of thoughts. Good. We like that. Vice Chair Dothett.
I guess a question for both staff and then the applicant. I'm just going to come sit right up there. Yeah, if you would come back up for just a second. Can I ask a question for the applicant or no? Yes? Yes. With your state license, is that where the CUP is required for your state license? Is that what that cutoff is, or is that just to be above 4 children?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
For you said you were going to be state licensed,
Yes.
correct? Is the state licensing requiring you to have the conditional use in place?
The state licensing requires me to have the conditional use.
So
yeah.
without a without a CUP, only being able to operate it, you can't get state license, then you can't take the low-income housing, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, thank you.
Without going through a 6-month process already, that I've already done. I would have to change, if this permit is not accepted, then I would have to start the application process with the state over again and resubmit everything, requesting a different form of license, which isn't undoable, but I would have to turn down all the families that I already have lined up, since I won't be able to accept the child care assistance.
Thank you. And then for staff, is it the stipulations is where it goes from 8 to 12, that's when the CUP is in condition, correct? So if they only had 8, there's no need to have a CUP. There's no reason to have a modifiable CUP if there's only 8. They would just be only operating 8 until next year when they could, in theory, reapply after we had it. So I don't know that having the CUP granted for 8 and then having a condition they can modify in a year. Really, if they only have 8, there's no CUP needed then, correct?
Mr. Foster.
Thank you, Chair Twait. Vice Chair Dothett. Yes, so the up to 8 children would be the home occupation permit, which is a different application and process. It is because it's more than 8 per our code for this zoning district that this application requires that conditional use permit.
So I think what I'm hearing, though, is that it would then change how she has to submit her paperwork again right now, and wouldn't allow any emergency drop-ins if we just had a home occupation, correct?
Right, if we did the home occupation, like the modification of the home occupation permit, then your paperwork would not need to be modified, correct? That wouldn't set you back.
It would.
If it's a home occupation versus a conditional use for a commercial.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, I'm saying that backwards. So, yeah, the thought was drop down to a home occupation permit, but that would mean resubmitting everything. So if we modify the conditional use permit, then you would still be on a forward momentum.
Potentially, it depends on whether the state accepts that as a full permit.
Okay.
Can I say something?
In a second. So, and then getting back to Commissioner Halstead's way of thinking as far as coming back in a year. So this is probably to Mr. Foster. That would be a substantial enough change that it would, you wouldn't just modify that conditional use, it would create a new conditional use. Am I correct?
Chair Tway, yeah, I think that would be a substantial change, and even though that would be the same kind of use of providing daycare for children, it would be a difference. 8 to 12, 8 to 12, that's a 50% increase. So I do think that. Just thinking of conditional use permits, if there's other types of permits that were sort of approved and then has some type trigger to increase intensity, I think would under normal circumstances require.
Yeah, because I think if we go down this path very far, I think it would be a disservice if we didn't go through that process again and have public testimony. And if we just modified it, I would think that wouldn't require it. So I think it would be substantial enough that we'd want to have public weigh-in again. So Commissioner Halstead, did you know? Vice Chair Dothett.
I guess this is for the applicant too. Just for clarification, by going from a home occupancy without a state license to a state licensed facility, can you describe a little bit more about what that entails as far as now your regulations? By being state licensed, I'm assuming there's a lot more home check-ins. They're going to be auditing a lot more of your stuff. You've got a lot of reporting you have to do. So it's a lot more stringent than the unlicensed facilities in the area, so correct?
It's a lot more stringent. I have a lot more, even just with the application process, that isn't even going to occur after I'm fully licensed. The requirements that I need to be specially trained in identifying abuse, I need to be specially trained in things like child safety within the home, outside of the home, first aid, CPR for babies and for children up to teenage years, up like through 18. I need to always have things like first aid kits with me. Every time we go for a walk, we have to have our first aid kit. There's a lot more. The fire department has to come at least once a year. They can drop in at any time. The state can drop in at any time. Things like that. There's a lot more requirements for a license that keeps the safety standards very, very high.
Commissioner Fikes.
I just wanted to weigh in. I agree with the staff's findings. I believe the land use plan for this has been met, and I hear the distinction between a learning center versus a daycare center, and I believe that in an urban setting, in a residential setting, you could have a 12-family household, and there's your 12 people. They could be all 18 years old with their own motorcycle and glass pack 4x4 ripping in and out at 2 a.m., or you could have a learning center that somebody's talking about with a strong background and the knowledge to support that business, that I believe this individual has a well-thought-out plan, and I'm going to be voting for it.
Vice Chair Dothett.
I would just like to say, some of the comments about the noise issues between 8 children and 12 children, I don't see that much of a difference, honestly, between 8 and 12 as far as noise issues. And if you do have more of a learning center type atmosphere, hopefully that'll be under control. So, I mean, unfortunately, if you want to be in a quiet cul-de-sac with nobody around, you're just going to have to go to the country. I mean, in a subdivision that's already known for a lot of kids playing in residential areas, I'd much rather have a licensed state facility that's under demand. And I really think that if we start denying these, it's not going to encourage people to go through the proper channels to be licensed. And then where you probably risk more of those non-licensed facilities. At least this one here, they've jumped through a lot of hoops. They appear to be going through the proper channels, doing things above ground and like they're supposed to, above and beyond. And I really hope that we can approve this as is. And I do agree with it. I think it's much needed. Being state licensed is opening up a lot more doors than it is just going to be. And I believe there are. I think we did one this last winter that is a state licensed facility for up to, I think they had 12 children, I think, in that one, if I could be mistaken, too, in the same neighborhood. And to my knowledge, I haven't heard any complaints about it since we authorized that one. And it is in, I would say, more of the heart of the neighborhood than this one is. This one really only has neighbors joining the property on one side. So for noise issues, you've got a creek on one side and you got a dead-end road with woods on the other, and then the street barrier between the other houses. As far as noise mitigation, I think this location for the neighborhood is probably as about as minimal as you're going to get in a neighborhood on this one. And I will be voting for this.
Anyone else? I'm going to revisit, and I should have wrote it down. I was listening and I didn't get my pen to my paper fast enough. But you said the backyard is fenced in. And it sounds like a fairly small area.
I don't know. I'm very, very bad at gauging size. So to me, 20 feet sounds very big.
Give us a rough idea here.
It's like,
Garden hose. You had your garden hose. That's 50 feet.
that means I have to be gardening. Know what that? I mean, it's probably the fenced-in area has got to be at least the length of this room, probably.
And Dan?
And I mean, I would say close to this room, maybe a little bit more narrow than this room. What is that? I'm sorry, I'm very bad. I have very poor spatial awareness.
24 by 28, maybe.
Okay. I mean, it's pretty square. And then we have a gate that goes out. We have a gate that goes out towards, like, on the side of my neighbors, like in the driveway side. And then we have a gate that goes out towards the walkway, towards the walking trail, which is the one that we would use if we went out to the walking trail. And then beyond that is just yard.
So looking at, we'll use this map, is the fence down towards Fifth Avenue, or where is it located?
We do have a fence that faces out towards Fifth Avenue in the backyard that goes out towards, I think you can even like see the boat there on the side of the house. It's right next to that boat.
The
And then-
guy with the better eyes is going to show me. Oh, okay, there we go. Okay.
Put my glasses on, I can show you.
I see the boat,
And then
okay.
there's one opposite of that that goes towards, like, into the driveway by the shed towards the neighbor's house.
Do you feel it's adequate for 8 kids in there?
I do think it's adequate. We have a rotation schedule that we would put into place if we did ever have 12 children there. So it would be 6 out, 6 in at a time. I'm very into outside play as much as possible, naturalistic play as much as possible. So we would be outside. The groups would be outside rotating throughout the day. So it would never be like all 12 of us out there at once, just rotating. And then I would like to be able to do some bigger activities in the yard beyond the fenced-in area if it's safe for the kids, if we have children that are not going to do things like run into the street or run down by the creek, because that's also very dangerous. But for our older children, be able to do things like a slip and slide day or something as a reward for them to go beyond the fenced area.
Okay. So, Commissioner Halstead, you had thrown out an idea of possible amendments. I'm just curious if you flush that out enough to decide you don't want to, or where you're at with that.
Sounding like the rest of my associates here are not in for that idea, so I wouldn't want to bring it up if it's not going to be thought of, and I guess I would finish my statement without putting any kind of conditions on this or looking at going from 12 to 8. I still feel that again does not meet criteria 2 for the non-economic value of the neighborhood, or criteria 3 where it would be in harmony with the comprehensive plan. And I have no doubt that your intentions are great and all that, and that you'd be able to manage it. I still feel that, and again, just kind of from my own experience, that having a daycare being my neighbor is one of the worst things that's happened to me. So for that reason, unlicensed daycare. Well, yeah, if I could get that resolved as well, I would. But again, for those reasons, I feel I'll be voting no for this one, unfortunately.
What's that? Well, I don't think I can make the motion. I shouldn't make the motion. We're going to go off the record just for some minutes here. Hang on just a second. La la la. Okay, there we go. Okay, we're back on the record. Vice Chair Dothett.
I guess I'll make a motion to go to adjudicative session for just us to kind of clarify a few items here as far as the CUP possibility. So if I can get a motion for adjudicative section for us to clarify a few things.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Any objections? Okay. Oh, yep.
Only thing is, like, if you want Ryan to go, if
Oh.
you want the planner to go in there with you, you would need to include him in that motion.
Okay. And yourself as well? Or do you?
I would prefer not to.
Okay, yeah, in case it's appealed and that kind of stuff, absolutely. Okay, yep.
Okay, so I'll modify that request to go to adjudicative session with staff being present for this, for clarification issues.
I'm okay with those modifications.
All right. And still no objections? All right, thank you. All right, we are back on the record. Commissioner Halstead.
Thank you. So I appreciate the amount of paperwork that you've done, and I would hate to make you have to redo anything. So I'm hoping by wording this correctly, this isn't going to cause an issue. So I would like to move that we add a condition to this conditional use permit that states that you will have 8 full-time children and an additional 4. Sorry. Yeah, I wrote something on the side, and I think I typed it in wrong. So 8 full-time children and an additional 4 children that would be on an emergency/temporary basis. So you would have 12 permitted in your operating or conditional use permit, with the understanding that what you were saying too, you would typically be running 8. On an emergency basis, you'd have 4. So I think that puts my mind at ease a little bit, and I think that's what I would like.
So that is a motion.
That is my motion.
We
Second.
like a second then, okay.
Second.
All right, discussion on the amendment. I don't think so. All right, so we'll vote on the amendment then to have 8 full-time and 4 potential for drop-in.
Jeff, before you
Yep.
guys vote, could I just ask what you mean by temporary and what you mean by emergency? Because if you want us to enforce a condition, what does temporary mean? 1 day at a time, 2 weeks, a month? And what do you consider an emergency?
I think that's one of the reasons we took so long in there, is we were trying to determine what would be an emergency. I think if we put a number on it and you went over in an emergency, if I would say it was a 24-hour or a 2-day or 3-day, but someone was out of state for a week or whatever, I mean, that's still kind of considered an emergency type situation to me. What do you think would be a good emergency if we set a temporary or an emergency date? If we said 2 days, would that be reasonable, or would that be unacceptable, or would that be kind of what you're expecting?
For me, like, my drop-in emergency care hours are going to be day by day. But I think that if we put limits on it like that, you're restricting the people of the community. So, like, if somebody loses their nanny and they can't hire a new one for a month, oops, sorry, my conditional use permit only allows me to accommodate you for 2 days. That's very restrictive. So I would like to tell you a number and what an emergency could qualify for, but in a world where daycare and accessible, affordable, safe childcare is very, very limited, it could be a month before somebody finds something. It could be 2 weeks. It could be a day.
So, I mean, I guess that is.
Well, let's have some discussion, I guess, regarding it then. So, Mr. Blue?
Yeah, I just want, the way the motion is now, it's, if neighbors complain that she's had 12 people there for the last 2 weeks, it's completely impossible for administration to enforce.
So not
Commissioner
to-
Fikes, go ahead.
So maybe not to exceed 30 days?
Would we want to,
You're still going to be, because if people complain that there's 12 people there all the time, but how do we know whether it's one kid there for 1 day or, different kids swapping out? I mean, theoretically, she's going to be able to have 12 people there all the time.
Could we tag them like a cow and
Absolutely.
scan them in?
You are always welcome to look at my records. I would keep impeccable records of the children that are there. Everybody who attends, even drop-in care, have to fill out an enrollment form with parent contacts, emergency contacts, who's allowed to pick up the children so that no children are released to unsafe people. So, I mean, there would be plenty of record of that if somebody were complaining. I guess my biggest thing is 8, 12. If somebody's complaining about 8, if somebody's complaining about 12, they're going to be complaining. So at that point, I feel like it's either going to be approved or it's not. I'm either going to be allowed to have the number that I'm requesting, or I'm not going to be able to, and I'll start the process over again, and I will be back here to get a different type of permit. But I will be pushing for the 12 again at some point, because I think that it is vital. I think that it is important to leave that space for the community and not restrict.
So we have an option to carry this down the road a little farther, or if you'd like to rescind your amendment, we can just go ahead and vote it up and down, unless anyone else has anything else to add.
So we could modify it for the no more than 30 consecutive days or something like that? Is that what we're looking for
Could do that too.
enforceability? Because she said that she had records. We could do something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to find a middle ground here where we all kind of, I guess, equally lose, but it doesn't sound like 8 or 12 is going to make a difference. I could just as easily rescind it.
Vice Chair Dothett.
I hate this terminology of equally lose. I think by not allowing this to go through, I think the only thing that we're losing is the community is losing out for the need for obviously somebody who cares about it, who's going through the procedures correctly, who is obviously willing to get state certified, which is a huge amount of hoops to jump through to get that. There's a lot of regulation that goes with that. The record keeping has to be really good. And I really hope that it's a need for the community. There's already a hard time to get enough people to get to work, and a huge conundrum with that right now is the ability to get employees, and it shouldn't be based on not having the ability to have daycare, and I think it's a need in the community, and I really hope this does go through and continues through the process and becomes to fruition, whether it's 8 or 12. I'm on board with the permit as the application as it is, but that's where I'm at on that.
Commissioner Fikes.
I'd just like to point out, in addition to what we are asking or not asking for here, something to also consider is the fact that, like you say, she's jumped through all these hoops for the application for the state, and the state has pretty stringent requirements, and the state is somebody that residents of the community and neighbors can also complain to as well. And they're probably going to step in and revoke her business license long before we would ever have a say in it. So knowing the hoops that she has gone through, that is confidence to me that this isn't going to be a fly-by-night operation. I have confidence that this individual is going to be prudent when she says that, 8 is reasonable, and in an event of an emergency, I would up it to 12. I don't see it as being an excess myself. And so with that understanding, I would be still willing to approve it.
All right, any other discussion?
I guess at this point, I'd rescind my original motion, and we could vote on it as it sits. I don't think the problem is with the applicant. I think the problem is with the number of kids, in my opinion.
Concurrence of the second for the withdrawal of the motion?
Yes.
Okay. All right, any other discussion? All right, seeing none, please call the roll.
Vice Chair Dothett?
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard?
Yes.
Commissioner Fikes?
Yes.
Commissioner Halstead?
No.
Chair Twait?
No.
Okay, you have 3 yes votes and 2 no votes, so motion passes.
All right. There is an appeal period that an affected party can file with the clerk's office within 15 days. If no one files, you will have your conditional use permit.
What happens when somebody does file?
Clerk, or who would like to answer that?
Sure, and I apologize, I don't have the full procedure in front of me. If you want to get in contact with our office tomorrow, I'll be happy to fill you in on the complete timeline, but it begins with an application being received by our office in the next 15 days, at which point, when that is received, it has to be approved by the clerk's office, which is then, it goes to council to set a date. And it's my understanding that it's the Board of Adjustment meeting that the council will be meeting as the Board of Adjustment is within 45 days of receipt of application.
So when somebody appeals, I will not be able to get my permit, and then it could be potentially over 45 days.
I believe so, yep.
So I'm not getting a license, thank you.
Well,
No.
When the Board of Adjustment meets, they will meet and reconsider all the staff report and the evidence and deliberate, and then they will choose to either uphold the decision or go against it and
Yes,
approve
but
the
what I'm saying
application.
is that after that time period, I have to start everything over. And so it blows the license out of the water, and it stops families from getting affordable childcare.
Well, you were awarded it tonight, so like I said, everything that you could have wished for is still the same as it would have been. So anyway,
Until it's appealed, right?
if it is appealed, correct. Yep. But this is a better outcome than
No,
what the
it
option
is.
was
It
for
is.
sure.
It's
So
very good. I'm
Okay.
very thankful.
well, good luck. Thank you. All right, under G, unfinished business, we have none. H, new business, we have 3 items tonight. H1 is for action approval, recommending the Kenai City Council adopt a resolution approving the updated 2022 Kenai Peninsula Borough Community Wildfire Protection Plan. Can I get a motion, please? Anyone?
I'm not seeing it.
Page 35.
Page 35. I'd like to make a motion. We approve page 35.
Second.
I'll
Now
make
we're
a
gonna do
motion
we need
recommending
a-
the City of Kenai Council adopt the resolution approving the updated 2022 Kenai Peninsula Borough Community Wildlife Protection Plan. New business
Second.
1, H1.
All right. Mr. Foster.
Thank you, Chair Twit and fellow commissioners. I believe Chief Pryor is going to present on this item.
Thank you, members of the commission. I don't know if you all had a chance to look at the plan in there on the memo that I sent to you. There was a link on there that sent you to the document, which is a very, very lengthy document. But it involved almost a 2-year process of us going through and combining plans from all these communities, the 17 communities that were involved in this. And so instead of having individual plans, we decided the best option for us to do was to get together and do one borough plan that all communities are involved in. And so the reason why this is coming to you guys is I'll be sending a resolution into the council for their approval of and adoption of it. And again, we've already kind of started on some of the process of mitigation, which there'll be a site / disposal site that'll be opening hopefully June 1st, just out by the soccer field. So there's many areas and items in this plan that we're trying to address, whether it's the gullies and doing mitigation in them, the / disposal sites, and we have, again, the plan will take you quite a while to read through, but there's specifics for the city of Kenai in there, and there's a couple pages in there that address everything that we've identified for us. And you know, some of the goals, the 3 goals of it was the collaboration with the communities, the prioritized fuel reduction, and the treatment of the structural ignitability, which we have critical infrastructure in ours, whether it's the facility out Beaver Loop, where we have a new water treatment facility out there, and the corridor out to the north of us, the gullies that are in the urban interface and that border all the homes. We want to start a process to do this. So there's grant funding that we're already seeking, and collaboration with the Division of Forestry, which the project that we're doing out here on the / disposal site will, it looks like it's going to be able to go through to where we'll be reimbursed from them to be able to man this site, and for a 3 to 4 year period. So the cost that we were looking at spending to do this is a reimbursable expense by the Division of Forestry. There's through the new infrastructure bill, there is a lot of opportunities possibly for us to seek other avenues, whether it's for homeowners to do mitigation on their own homes and continue. But our focus right now is city property and in the areas. So again, the gully in between Forest Drive, not North and South Forest and North and South Spruce, that's a huge one that goes a long ways up there. And again, another opportunity to go with Parks and Rec that I met with them, and one of the goals is to try to put in maybe a single track mountain bike trail that crosses back and forth in that gully for recreation, to draw individuals in here to use the community. So there's many facets of this, and again, I encourage you to look at the plan in there and the specifics of Kenai, but we're looking for a recommendation from you guys to send to the council recommending an approval of this resolution to adopt it.
All right, thank you. Anyone have any questions? Vice Chair Dothett.
Not a lot of questions, but I just appreciate all the hard work that went into this, and I really think it's a needed item for this to kind of move forward. I was able to glance at the plan. It was very well thought out. A lot of really good areas that came to mind that I was really hopeful they were going to be including in there, and I hope it moves to fruition, and I'm glad you guys taking the time to look at grant funding for possibly not having funds coming directly out of the city's coffers, but being able to use some of the funds from other state agencies or federal agencies to help mitigate this. I think it's a good thing, and I'll definitely be for it.
Anyone else? All right, thank you. Okay. All right, any other discussion? It looks like there is none, so please call the roll.
Jeff, do you guys typically open these up for public comment or not?
I guess we could, absolutely. Yeah, I know we're going to on the next one or two, so I guess we could open it up for public testimony if anyone wishes to come forward. All right, looks like none. We'll close it. And I think we're done with the discussion, so please call the roll.
Commissioner Woodard?
Yes.
Commissioner Vikes?
Yes.
Commissioner Halstead?
Yes.
Chair Twait?
Yes.
Vice Chair Dothett?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, that takes us to item H2 for approval, recommending to the Kenai City Council to enact Ordinance 3287-2022, conditionally donating certain city-owned properties described as Tract A Parkview Subdivision. Kenai parcel number 047010118 to the Boys and Girls Club of the Kenai Peninsula for development of facilities for youth sports, recreation, education, after-school care, and other youth activities. And I'm going to pass the gavel on this one. I don't necessarily have a financial conflict at this point in time, but on the perception of a potential one down the line, I'd like to go ahead and pass the gavel, if that's okay.
Yes, so upon your request, we determined that based on the factors outlined in the City of Municipal Code or by your request, that you have substantial financial interest or may in the future, that you can't participate in this, so you'll be recusing yourself for this. So a decision by the presiding officer, which is myself, may be overridden by a unanimous vote by the members present, exclusive, or the members presenting to the conflict. So if there's anybody present, they can say no to this, but I will be accepting it at this time. Seeing no objections, then I guess you will be recused.
I'd like to make a motion, we approve action approval item recommending the City of Kenai City Council enact Ordinance 3287-2022, conditionally donating certain city-owned property.
Second.
So with that, is there somebody, a representative for Boys and Girls Club that would like to,
Staff.
or staff report first? Okay.
Thank you, Vice Chair Dothett. The Boys and Girls Club of Kenai Peninsula is interested in expanding and providing campus to serve its mission in the city of Kenai. The Boys and Girls Club has the opportunity to purchase an existing facility at 320 South Spruce Street and approach the city requesting a donation of the adjacent owned parcel, which we can see here on page 37 of the packet. That's parcel 04701018. And this would allow the organization enough space to complete its campus, providing after-school and summer care and sports and recreational activities for youth. The club has stated it intends to utilize the property for construction of a clubhouse and parking, as well as a potential greenhouse and playground. The campus as a whole is intended to provide administrative offices and area for youth activities, including sports, recreation, education, and after-school and summer activities. And on page 38 and 39, you can see the ordinance for council's consideration of that conditional donation. The question in front of the commission is, does the commission recommend council approve conditionally donating city-owned land to the Boys and Girls Club? And that concludes my presentation.
Do you have any comments or questions? Want to open it up to the public first? Do we have a representative from the Boys and Girls Club that would like to speak on this? Did the attorney have a question, Mr. Bloom?
I don't have a question. I can provide information if members of the commission have questions about it. I do know that, and Ryan can speak to this too, but I believe at the last night the Boys and Girls Club had a board meeting that they unanimously agreed to purchase the adjacent parcel on the condition that the city donates the other parcel to them. We had previously at the last council meeting, we had a discussion item where we discussed potentially looking at subdividing part of the parcel off so that if the Boys and Girls Club didn't need all of it, maybe some of it could be used for other private development. We weren't able to come up with anything at the time, but that is a future possibility of trying to move some land around on other parcels to provide private development and to satisfy the needs of the Boys and Girls Club. But there's nothing concrete at this time that would change the ordinance.
So just for clarification, as it's written right now, it's just the whole parcel, correct?
Correct. As it's written right now, it's the whole parcel, and it would be up to a member of council or one of the sponsors to make any amendments.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, thank you, commissioners. My name's Ryan Tunseth. I live at 2815 Bryson Avenue here in Kenai. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this. I apologize in not really knowing how or that this was on the packet or if there was opportunity for public comment on this issue ahead of this, and so I apologize for having to kind of work that in here late, but thank you for that. Myself, I've been on the board of directors for the Boys and Girls Club since 2010, and so I'm very passionate about it. Having our own clubhouse is something that's been in our strategic plan and vision for a long time, but it's not something we've been able to realize because we just don't have enough money to build in what we kind of want. And that's why we live in and operate in borough buildings up to this point. So I feel like you guys are owed a little bit of an explanation on maybe how we got here and the brevity of which we sort of were able to get here. What happened was set all of this in motion was that in August 7th of 2021, Kenai lost a pioneer in the oil industry in Royce Roberts. He owned Arctic Pipe Inspection and was in business for almost 50 years, hundreds of employees. And when he passed, he donated to the Boys and Girls Club $5 million, which really set in motion us looking, and his conditions that he wanted to see were that that we made an attempt to put that facility in Kenai, and that, you know, to not piss the money away kind of thing, I think were his exact words in the email. Now, in conjunction with this, what happened was the Kenai Community Care Center is dissolving their nonprofit, and consistent with their bylaws and dissolving a nonprofit, their desire to find somebody compatible that they would sell their facility to. And so they gave us first right of refusal on that option, and really kind of a sweetheart option to get in the door. One that we looked at if we had to build the same facility, we just wouldn't even come close. And so two things really happened kind of right at the same time. One, this very large donation from this extremely generous man, and then two, this facility popping up. We've done a ton of due diligence on this specific facility, and don't believe that we can accompany the wishes of what we want and envision for a large campus Boys and Girls Club at that location without significant civil improvements and land improvements to be able to accommodate that. And so that's where the request came from. It initially started as a request for land that was closer on the ball field property, but that didn't seem like a good option because moving ball fields, even though that, with permission,
you can continue on.
Thank you. That even though that may not have, that it may be in the plans to move the ball field at some point, that was going to be expensive and maybe not the right option. And so that's what started us looking at this other piece of land. And so I felt like it was maybe important to give just sort of like a little explanation of how we got here. And certainly appreciate council members Gabriel and Bazin for introducing this for us. I think what we feel like, and maybe to answer the question of the value or what is it, why would the city give a piece of land away? And for me, it's as simple as this. It's what put these wheels in motion. It's recognizing the significant contributions of an individual like Royce Roberts and recognizing in your community the value of legacy giving and what that looks like. And so really being able to send a strong message on behalf of the Kenai that not only do you support the mission and the things and the value of the Boys and Girls Club, but that you certainly support and recognize the contributions of pioneers like Royce and want to, you know, match that will when legacy donors do this type of thing for your community. And so I just would really urge you, and I think it's really important that you support this. I think that for us, if we're not able to realize this particular facility with this extra land, likely what it's going to mean for us is just sort of back to the investment table. We're going to have to look at, you know, investing that money, trying to build the endowment, and getting to a position where we could make something like we want happen. But as you guys know, it's extremely expensive right now to build anything. Any other locations that we've looked at, buildings similar, we're just not there. So we felt like this is kind of all just really, you know, lucky that it sort of fell into our lap the way that it has, to be able to execute this. And if it's not this, we're probably just back to, you know, trying to invest and look at the next option and what that might mean. So I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you guys have. And I apologize for maybe going a little long. I know it's late, already been a little bit of a late meeting, but I followed a few of these and you guys go pretty late. So I think with that, I'll maybe turn it over to you if you have questions.
Okay, Chair Fikes.
Through the chair, where are you operating now, and what facilities, when you say the Boys and Girls Club, do you offer to the community?
So all of our facilities across the peninsula are just in Kenai.
Just in Kenai, so.
Just in Kenai. So we operate the main Boys and Girls Club out of the Aurora Borealis building, which is the old school there across from the old Cars Mall. And then we still operate the Teen Center, which is the upstairs portion of the rec center.
So this new structure that you're looking to purchase, would that be combining those two facilities, or would you still operate those simultaneously? So you're looking at 3 facilities?
No, we would move out of the Aurora Borealis facility completely. We would probably look to transition out of the teen center, but I wouldn't say that right off the bat just because I know that there's improvements and things that need to be made to the existing care center building to then sort of accommodate for that. So that would probably be a little bit later if we were to exit from that, but we would certainly be looking at leaving that one Aurora Borealis building as quick as feasible. And that's really the risk for us in this situation, is that we've enjoyed a really positive relationship with the borough to be able to operate in their buildings, and positive financially. It's really cheap operating. And so for us, it is risky in that now we're moving into something that we would own, and roughly a $100,000 a year operating cost just to keep in kind of mothball state. So that is the risk to us, certainly, but those would be the two facilities in Kenai.
And have you looked at any additional revenue streams, grants, or anything like that, if to add on to that $5 million?
Yeah, absolutely. The hope is that we're able to do this whole entire deal and leave roughly $4 to $5 million intact to fund the continual operation and additional building projects. The two primary that we're talking to are Murdoch Foundation and Rasmussen Foundation. Both of those organizations are, we believe, going to be right there at the table with us, but a large portion of being able to demonstrate to them what you're doing is the site control. And so that's kind of the first step. We can demonstrate that we have site control, that we have a specific location, and then feel very comfortable that we're going to be able to bring those partners in. But yes, absolutely.
So again, back to what services. So I'm not really familiar. So you have the facility over by Aurora Borealis. Is that before and after care? And then the teen center, is that again before and after care? So what will be taking place in this building that requires this land donation?
I'm not sure before and after. Do you mean before and after school?
So I'm just hearing Boys and Girls Club. So what services? I know nothing about Boys and Girls Club.
Okay, so primarily the after-school service. We also serve roughly 50,000 meals a year, so we have a pretty robust meal program that we get through food grants. And then, of course, all of the programming that takes place in the club.
So is that 50,000 that is available to anybody and everybody in the community? Is that only available to young people? Or, again, if the community is donating this land, who is benefiting? Just the young people, just the Boys and Girls Club? That's where I'm getting at with the services offered.
Well, I think maybe a bit of a indirect and direct answer there. I would say it's a benefit to every single resident in the city of Kenai. I think that we've, been an active operating organization now for roughly 50 years, and provide tremendous benefit to the community, whether that's in athletic programming, after school care, mentorship programming, STEM, any of the math programs that we offer. We primarily provide services to children, and so that's the direct impact we hope to have is on the kids in the community that need us the most. I think that the indirect is the benefit to having something like this in the community. Is a benefit to all the residents.
I have a question for you on this. So do you have renderings or something that states why you need the entire parcel, or would it be feasible to use a partial of the parcel? Or do you need this entire section to make it feasible for your guys' future plans? Or what, I guess maybe you can expand on more what your future plans are that you would need
so the two
that size of property
sort
for.
of immediate ones. And again, I apologize for not, if I would have known this was on for tonight or an opportunity to comment on it, I think we would have maybe tried to put in there maybe some of the renderings and drawings that we do have, and we've provided some of those to council as well. But primarily the addition of building a soccer field on one side and then another building that would be primarily the clubhouse, the rooms for the kids. The existing structures that are there now, two of them will just need to be basically either moved or bulldozed or do something with, because they're like residential type places that are not really suitable for Boys and Girls Club type of programming. And then the main building, which is administrative offices and stuff, will take a little bit of work to make offices combined, so it's like 3 offices in one to make a bigger room. And so there's some civil work that will happen, certainly with parking lots and bus turnarounds and things like that. There's addition of a soccer field that we want to build, and then another clubhouse building that would primarily be situated on that piece of land.
With the area in question, has there been any question about, I know looks like a residential house right there. Is that something that's been in question as far as with the Boys and Girls Club, or have they worked forward with that?
Yeah, we've reached out to the owners of that, and tentatively they've agreed that if this goes through, that they'd be willing to negotiate to sell the property to us. So that's part of our intention as well, is to somehow acquire that and then either move it or potentially use it as a administrative office or something like that. But
and then the whole deal being on the actual care facility, has that been, is that under contract right now, or are you still working under contract on the purchase price on that, or is it like a pseudo donation, or how is that? Is that fairly set in stone already? I'm just kind of curious on that.
Well, all we got to with them was sort of like the initial, hey, we're willing to entertain purchasing this, and so we entered into sort of a loose agreement with them to like go through due diligence and stuff. We haven't arrived at a purchase sale agreement yet with an actual number that I've seen, but we have in loosely, I think that the number was like right around $3 million. I could be off by a little bit on that number, but we have it. And last night agreed that we would purchase the property contingent upon the city donating the land.
And do you know how many, off your head, with the clubhouse and the parking lot and the soccer field, how many acres of land you're looking at, something like that? Do you remember roughly?
It's maybe right around 4 or 5 acres. I want to say kind of in that range.
So the lot that we're looking at additioning to that is, with the whole piece there, that's only like 2.9 acres. Is that what I'm saying? Would that not be enough for you, and you're looking for more land then too on top of that, or?
I'm sorry, which piece are we talking about now? The piece that the care center's on?
No, I'm talking about the piece in question as far as the donation would go.
That's where the new clubhouse would be sited. That's the plan there.
Okay, and that's where I was kind of curious if you guys had an idea on how much land you would need of that lot, if you needed the whole lot, or say, I know it was brought up about possibly being able to subdivide some of it off for housing or other developments. I guess my concern is it's a primo spot in city of Kenai. We're limited on good building quality lots with a view lot. I really think nothing against the Boys and Girls Club. I think there's a great facility, and I've used them in my past with my kids. I'm just trying to see benefit for both, two different directions in the city where the Boys and Girls Club could possibly use this, and then possibly you could see some other developments on these this land that could be utilized for possible housing developments. And because we're already talking about possibly already losing one residence, possibly a couple others that are not necessarily residents right now, and we already are kind of in a housing crunch as it is right now. I would just really like to be able to see where we might be able to get along, where we could have the best of both worlds, if we could come to a conclusion where we really only need a couple acres to make this happen, and if we had plans on something like that, I could see that being an option too. That's why I was kind of curious, is how much land you needed on that. I see that in the thing there is a stipulation that the Boys and Girls Club could later subdivide if they didn't need it all. I'm just wondering if it'd be something that we could consider now before the Boys and Girls Club doesn't have to subdivide it, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I can't speak for the board, just an individual on the board. But I can speak sort of as a resident of the city of Kenai. And that's, I think, a question like you guys have to answer, because as I drive down that road, and I've driven down that road many times my whole life going to Catholic church, and everybody's been there knows that when church gets out, that can be a nightmare getting out of that road and all that. But you really have a situation where you have church, park on the other side of the creek, another church on this side of the road, a women's resource center, and then potentially a boys and girls club. And so what you're talking about is also then like some condos. It, to me, seems like more compatible with that being like a sort of park campus. And like, you're right, it is a really extremely valuable piece of land. And I would imagine that if it was up for bid at fair market value, it'd probably get a lot of interest. I don't disagree. I think that if you ask Thor Evenson, who owns the piece of property next to it, he's probably had people offer him to buy that land like all the time. You know, that's you're not wrong. I mean, it's a very valuable piece of property. I would just maybe contend that, like, is that the compatibility that the city would be looking for in an attempt to be developing housing or finding locations for housing development?
It was my understanding that piece of land was on a fairly good slope. You know, when you're looking at the overheads here, and that, not severe, but that's a lot of land clearing and a lot of groundwork that you'd have to do as well. I guess you're prepared for that or understand that as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Unless that'd be a really one-sided soccer game.
Yeah, no, that would primarily be on that side that faces the bluff. That's primarily where the clubhouse would go, and then the soccer field would be on the other side of the admin buildings, where these other buildings would be taken down. And I want to say that it's like maybe at 300 feet before it starts sloping a little bit. It could be off a little bit.
Yeah, it looks deceiving from the road. I was walking around down there today, kind of get an idea of what the lot looks like, and it does have a little slope to it for sure, but there's actually quite a bit more, even than I realized, level ground up there. It just kind of drops down to the road pretty quick. I was kind of, for feasibility of using it for a fairly large building, it's fairly, surprisingly, a little more level than I had even thought up there.
Question for administration, is there any other parties at this time or anyone else that is interested in this parcel? It seems like we only have 3 pages here, and we're being asked to make a recommendation for approval, but 3 pages doesn't really seem like a whole lot. So for that reason, I don't feel like I can make a solid decision one way or the other for recommendation. It's kind of a late hour for this for me. I don't think it was very well thought out, but that's just kind of my opinion.
And I know it's been brought up too. Was the Boys and Girls Club not a prize to possibly looking at other lots? I know there's the fields, but there's the undeveloped land on either side of the fields. Has that been brought up as another possibility for expansion too, for more land?
By where the baseball fields are?
Yeah, so there's the baseball field that's existing and being used, but there's a fairly sizable chunk of land on the left and to the right that is just treed right now. If either one of those would suffice for further development also?
I'm trying to think of the land, so like where the women's softball field is, or the one.
Yeah, so it's to the left and the right of the women's softball field.
And that, was initially, we looked at, in discussions with the city, of like the potential for that side as well. And like I said, that's when sort of the discussions about moving the fields came in and seemed a little bit less likely and feasible for that to happen. Because you have certainly an interest group there, and maybe being displaced in the Little League or whatever, and so it seemed like this was maybe a better path to go down. And again, I apologize for if this does seem like it's not very much in your packet. I don't know that this was like noticed. Certainly I don't know if anybody was told the Boys and Girls Club that this would be on the agenda, and I'm not sure that why or how it made it on the agenda. I didn't see anything in the previous meeting minutes that would request that this was in there. And so I'm apologetic that if it seems like we haven't provided a lot of information, that's probably accurate, and wanting to be here to perhaps address any of the questions that you might.
Just as a follow-up to administration, where do we stand as a city before in the past? Do we have any history of donations to other folks? Is there a process that's gone through? And can you give us a little?
Staff?
Through the chair, Commissioner Fikes. The city does have a history of doing conditional donations. Last year we had a few. We had the Triumvirate Theater conditional donation, as well as the Kenai Peninsula Housing Initiative as well, and that's actually several real years and several projects with them. So there is a history with these types of conditional donations. It's my understanding that this was actually requested by council to be brought in front of the commission for your consideration.
What are the council, or what are the past experiences? What are they looking for the zoning and planning to flesh out during these things? I mean, there's no code to follow. There's no standard that says when we do this, we require this. So I guess what are you asking us as commissioners sitting up here to do? To give you a rubber stamp and run away with it, or to say no? Either way, it's just, I guess I'm at a loss as to what you're trying to accomplish here.
Through the chair, Commissioner Fikes. Yeah, and so, it's the conditional donations, they have conditions on them, and that's typically that the improvements need to actually, before the property itself can actually be deeded, the improvements of, the conditional donation need to be completed. And so, there are, I would say what we typically get at this stage are just sort of, it's still at the concept level. We might have some drawings that kind of gives a notion of what, what the project might be, but that the conditional donation would create it so that there's certain steps or improvements that need to take place for that property actually be donated and deeded to, in this case, the Boys and Girls Club. So,
and does the city have any plans for future expansion of any overflow parking for dip netting season, or any kind of baseball fields that this land would now not be available for?
Through the chair, Commissioner Fikes, I believe, and I'm just looking at the council ordinance here, that it was identified as
It was disposal in the draft land management plan. It was one that actually I was able to. I kind of specifically pulled out as this is a prime lot as possibly other uses the city should possibly look at disposal or development in other rounds. At the time, we didn't know about the possibility of the Boys and Girls Club as being another option, but that was used. And it did come up that they weren't looking at this for city purposes, for a parking lot or anything like that, but that they were really willing to sell this for further development. And that's why it kind of, that a disposal recommendation for the draft plan became about on this particular lot.
So for purposes of clarification, when you say disposal, you meant to put on the open market for fair market value and not for a land donation for a return of city assets to be benefited by all community?
Through the chair, Commissioner Fikes. Dispose means that it could be sale, lease, trade, donation. So those are all viable options with that definition.
My personal opinion on this is I would really like to give the Boys and Girls Club more time to be able to make their case on what they need, maybe see some renderings. I'd like to motion to postpone this to the next meeting to give more time for more comment. Maybe more data could bring by. Maybe you can have the Boys and Girls Club have a presentation for us of what their future plans are and how much land they think they need. Because I don't want to see this get completely just on a whim canceled because we just don't know enough information. I'd like to have everybody have both sides, and maybe we can come to a agreement that by then it might be modified slightly or something else might come up as an idea, or there might be a phase 1 or phase 2. But I really think we should make a motion to table this until we can get more further information, allow the Boys and Girls Club to give us a presentation, maybe with some renderings and some more ideas and schematics, so we kind of get an idea of a grasp of what they want to do with it. I think we're both a little underprepared for the grasp of what this is coming for, and I don't want to see it get a negative outcome just because we weren't informed enough. So if we could get a second on that, I think.
I agree. I think we should be, that was my recommendation as well. It just seems like we don't have quite enough information. I did get a couple of responses from the public saying that they weren't quite informed, and I think a very good idea, as long as it's not causing a bottleneck on something else, I think postponing it for our next meeting would be a great idea.
I'd like to ask the administration a question, though. What are the options with postponing versus roll call? If you were to continue with a motion and vote on it, or if you were to continue with postponement?
Did we have public testimony that wants to come in here?
Yeah.
If you want to do a public.
If you postpone it before we are able to comment, then we can't comment. Yeah. So
Okay.
I was just going to ask you to hold your motion if you would.
Okay. So if we have other public comment, if you have another further, we can get the other public comment and then go from there, if you don't have any further?
No, nothing further. I would just add that I think that this will be on the council's agenda for the next meeting, and so it could perhaps be, would that be also a request to the council to delay that question?
That would be something for staff.
Until it exhausted planning and zoning. I don't want us to sort of misunderstand the process. See, we thought the process was that this would be at the council level, and then any plans or things we build and that kind of thing, that it would be at this level. And so not having, been giving the notice or how this came to be on this particular day in the packet like this is, I'm not sure. So I just want to make sure that what you are doing is we're still planning on going to the council meeting next week. And so I guess I'll leave that up to you.
And staff, do you have a comment for that through the staff, or maybe we can get clarification on that?
Are we back in discussion, or we have a motion on the floor? Can you clarify?
We never got an official second for the motion, so I think it was, yeah.
So we're
we
still in
don't have a
discussion?
motion.
Still in
Yeah, we
discussion
don't
on
have
it.
Okay, I
a
just wanted to
motion
clarify that. Thank
to
you.
postpone on the floor, but,
But
It can
that,
still,
I'll yield.
we do have a council member present. Maybe we can reach out to them for clarification. If you can give us a little bit more, I don't know if we can do that or not.
Just at the 10,000 foot level, okay? I'm thinking that we were looking for a recommendation, but I'll get up there and testify as a citizen on saying that we needed more information than was presented tonight, to be fair to you. I've seen more information in my council packet than was presented tonight. The information's there.
It certainly could have
It's
been
there.
shared with this body as well.
But it was a public record last week that it was going to be referred to
This is a
planning.
public comment that I'm doing right now.
Yeah,
correct?
exactly, but let
us
me,
schedule-
no, the procedure is that we referred it in our council meeting last week to planning and zoning, so it's been public record for that week, okay? And that's all I know about the process. I've been going to America for a while, so that's how I left it, and this is how I found it.
So on that note, I would we'll go ahead and have you step down. We'll get the other public comment here, and then we'll kind of go from there.
So when they do refer it, though, the entire laydown is referred, or just?
It's the design of the administration.
Yeah, well, on this, we've got three, well, we have the original ordinance is basically what I got on this one, so. Go ahead. Nick?
Christine Schmidt, 513 Ash Avenue. I guess from the point of view of the public, there's really very little information about what's going on here. Okay, so it's really difficult for us to be able to weigh in one way or the other. And I want to say right off the bat, I have nothing against the Boys and Girls Club or any nonprofit, but my concern is a couple of things. We went through this land management plan, and there was a lot of talk about this lot, being available to be disposed of, not for nonprofits to donate, but rather to sell, to make available for housing and other types of things. So I guess I feel like this is a prime piece of land, and I don't think it should be donated to anybody. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that the city does not have a process by which they evaluate these kinds of things. Not at all. It's pretty much total ad hoc. Someone comes in, wants land, they talk to the city administration, they want a piece of land, the city administration puts it on the table, and then the council votes on it. And that's not really fair to the other nonprofits in our community that also might have needs or wants, that they aren't, they don't do that. They don't come here and say, we want you to give us a piece of land. So I just think, I guess I heard also that some council members were also concerned that there wasn't a real process to come to evaluate these requests. And so it looks like you're sort of preferring one nonprofit over the other because someone can come in and just get it right on the agenda, gets voted on right away. I think it was ready to be voted on by the council last week. And others don't have it that easy. So I guess I would rather see the city come up with a process for evaluating requests for donations and what land we're asking for too. Like what could this piece of land be that is now going to be tied up forever by a nonprofit that doesn't pay real property taxes? So, that's another issue is that all these donations, people, they don't contribute to the community in terms of taxes like the citizens do, where a housing development or some other kind of private development would. I guess the third thing I want to say too is that, oh boy, I just forgot what I was going to say. There were three things. Oh yes, I think that many times when I've come to testify before the council and the planning commission about buffer zones and buffer areas, and we've been told over and over again, you have to buy it. You go buy it, even though it benefits the residential areas of our community, no one's saying, well, why don't you ask for a donation? We're being told over and over again, you have to buy that. You have to buy Lot and Acres. You have to buy Walker Lane. Buy. And yet a nonprofit can just come in and the next thing you know, it's on your agenda to vote on. And that's just not fair. There has to be a process by which these sorts of available land gets disposed of that's fair to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else for public comment? Looks like seeing one more.
So, Bob Malloy, 513 Ash. Thank you, commissioners. And I think this is something that I agree with the Vice Chair Douthat about. This is a really valuable piece of property. The city doesn't have much left in its inventory for residential purposes that's of significant value or a good location. And I know that in the past the council looked at, before you went through the land management process, the council looked at this property and they had a discussion about that and maybe getting for Evenson's and for the community making a campground and RV park. And that didn't fly because the majority on the council thought that this would be a good place for condos, for private development, for condos and for taxes. One concern I have is, the needing the whole thing to build a soccer field. We have soccer fields and we have playgrounds already, and they just need a van, which they have to take kids over to the existing soccer fields or playgrounds to play on them. And so I don't see the public policy benefit of donating, such a large parcel that is in a unique location that has, substantial value to build a soccer field when we already have them. I think the Boys and Girls Club does provides a lot of great programs for the youth in our community, and they did a good job when they operated the Kenai Rec Center, for years for the city, and the city compensated them to do that. And I'm happy to hear that they're not going to just abandon the teen center right away, but I also am concerned that they don't have enough confidence that they're only going to buy this property, that has a lot of what they need from the care center, only if the city donates property to them. That's a big concern to me, and I don't see why. I understand the risk they're talking about, but I think they should have confidence enough that this is what they need, this is what their program is, and they can do this without a soccer field, because we have soccer fields. So, anyway, thank you. Appreciate your, time and consideration.
Thank you. And is there any other public comment? Seeing none? Doesn't. Anybody on Zoom that wanted to comment? Public comment online?
No, we have Councilmember Winger on the line, but no members of the public.
Okay. So I'm going to come back to look for a motion to postpone so we can get some more information on this, so we can get maybe some renderings and let the Boys and Girls Club really show their, justify their case and give us a fair due diligence on our part. I think I don't want people to jump into conclusions without being fully informed. I didn't fully understand the scope or what was going on with this myself, and I really would like to see more of future plans and other options and stuff like that, what their future aspect and looks and things are going to be. So if I can get a motion to postpone to our consideration for our next meeting.
I'd like to move we postpone this to the next meeting, our next planning and zoning meeting. Do we have to set the date for that, or just do I can say the next?
The next meeting is fine. It's May 25th.
Next meeting on the 25th, with the understanding that we would hope to get a presentation from the Boys and Girls Club as to their layout, potentially more information from staff, and that would also forward on to City Council that they postpone their judgment until after we've been able to rule on that.
So that was the motion. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Saying a second, motion passes, or do we need to go to vote? Unanimous?
You can ask if there's any objections.
Is there any objections, or can we look
Yeah,
at
I
any
object.
applicants?
I think we should call a vote.
Seeing that, I guess we'll call a vote or postpone it till next meeting.
All right. Commissioner Halsted?
Yes.
Vice Chair Dothett?
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard?
Yes.
And Commissioner Fikes?
No.
All right, motion to postpone passes.
I'm going to now give the gavel back to the chair at this time.
The virtual gavel. All right. One more item under new business, H3, approval recommending the Kenai City Council adopt resolution number 2022, yet to be determined, it looks like, approving the execution of a lease to Swanson Properties LLC for the Lot 6, Block 5, General Aviation Subdivision Number 1 amended. Can I get a motion? Commissioner Halsted.
I move we approve action approval item recommending the City Council approve resolution 2022-2B XX, approving the execution of a lease to Swanson Properties LLC.
I will second that motion.
All right, staff report.
Thank you, Chair Twait. What we have here is a consideration for approving execution of a lease to Swanson Properties LLC. On page 44, the staff report, you can see the subject property. Most folks might be more familiar with that it's Ron's Rent-It Center. And I wanted to point out here as well, the adjacent property to the north is also leased by Swanson Properties LLC for use with Ron's Rent-It Center. The lease term for the office and warehouse use was effective on April 14th, 1967. It was a 55-year lease, terminates on June 30th, 2022. This application proposes to maintain the original and current uses on the property. And with their application is the appraised value of existing improvements now. And actually, I didn't have them in the packet, but we do have it with the case file. Unfortunately, I left that upstairs. But for the application, they provided the evidence of existing improvements that would allow for a 45-year lease. So that was above the $300,000 and change for a 45-year lease. Now, having said that, this application is actually requesting a shorter lease term. It's requested to June 30th, 2031. That would align with the existing lease on the adjacent property at 145 North Willow Street, and that is that property to the north on the parcel map on page 44. And then at that time, the lease for non-aeronautical uses with direct airfield access can be evaluated. And so this property, or really properties, do have direct access to the airfield. And it is a non-aeronautical use. The FAA, in particular, considers this type of property that has direct airfield access to that it really should be, primarily for aeronautical uses. So knowing that, and knowing that both of these leases were out of sync, that to extend this out to the other lease would put them in sync, and then also allow a consideration for the future use beyond 2031 for the property. The parcel is within the airport light industrial zone. And what I did want to note is the proposed use for rental and sales equipment, that office and warehouse use, has been considered an airport compatible use. An airport compatible use because it does provide sales and services to the airport, but as a non-aeronautical user. And an airport compatible use is a permitted and compatible use in that zone. And so the question before the commission is, does the commission recommend council approve the execution of a lease to Swanson Properties LLC? That concludes my presentation. Happy to stand for questions.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Halstead.
So is my understanding is that after that 2031, they would potentially not be there or move to another location? They would cease to be there?
Through the chair, Commissioner Halstead. Yes, so that would be a consideration. And in fact, it would likely be well before the 2031 date, if there was discussion of potentially trying to find a better, more compatible location for both the Ron's Rent-It Center, and then certainly that idea to have an aeronautical use that has direct access to the airfield. So that would give an opportunity to, that type of consideration. It takes time. It takes time to have those discussions and see about a potential, change in use there.
Yeah, I would hate to see them leave. They've been there for quite a while, and been a great service to the Kenai Peninsula. So I would hope very much so that if they do vacate that particular location, that they stay within our city and keep providing a great service. So I don't see any problem with extending the lease as it is.
Vice Chair Dothett.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with extending them to get them to be on the same paddle, and I'm on the same boat there. I really hope that come 2031, if they're still wanting to be there, that we allow them to be there, or just say that they got to park a plane there to make it so it's on aeronautical. I'm not sure if they can start renting aeronautical equipment or not, but kites, yeah. I think it's a good idea to extend this out to 2031, and I hope we can make it work past then, or at least give them a good option to be able to stay in the city.
They have the best lawn dethatcher and plug aerators around, so I agree. I think kind of echo what everybody else has said. Any other comments? All right, please call the roll.
Commissioner Woodard,
Yes.
Commissioner Fikes,
Yes.
Commissioner Alstad,
Yes.
Chair Tweet,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right, under item I, pending items, we have none. Takes us to reports. J1, City Council. Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Can you say that again? I didn't hear you.
We didn't need all the votes? I didn't get to say yes.
Oh, you didn't?
Vice Chair Dockett.
yes.
Yes, thank you. Motion passes unanimously.
All right, now Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair Doth. It gave me time to finish my candy. On May the 4th, we had a council meeting here in Chambers, and we had a presentation from Velda Geller of the Kenai Senior Connections regarding the 2022 Meals on Wheel event. And it was one of their most successful that they've had in a long time. Approximately $50,000 was raised. Okay, and that goes, of course, to the city budget to defray costs of their establishment. The March for Meals was definitely very, very successful this year. We passed unanimously an ordinance accepting and appropriating private donations to the Kenai Animal Shelter for the care of animals. Incidentally, any of these, I did bring my packet. If you want me to read memos or anything, I can do that. Otherwise, I'll just pass through what I have written here. We passed unanimously an ordinance increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the general fund for the police department, accepting a grant from the Alaska High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area for drug investigation overtime expenditures. We had a resolution that was passed unanimously approving execution of a lease of airport reserve lands using the standard lease form between the City of Kenai and Joel Codwell on FBO General Administration, and this involves Kenai Aviation. We had a resolution authorizing an agreement for professional engineering services for the roadway capital improvements project. As I don't know if you heard our city manager on the radio today, but basically what we're going to do is get this Wildwood Drive refurbished. I believe it was it was established, maybe even paved when it was a military base, and not much is done to it, and it definitely needs help. And so we are going to do that. There's other improvements like to North Willow and various sinkholes, and these will be evaluated and made ready for bid, and perhaps for sure next year's construction season we will be able to accomplish this. We had new business regarding an ordinance 3287, conditionally donated certain city-owned property described as Track A Parkview subdivision. This was the topic of a very thorough discussion tonight, and my note says that it was a public hearing introduction. It was taken off the consent agenda, and we did have some discussion, and we did refer it on the record to Planning and Zoning for tonight. There was a action approval for special use permit for Weaver Brothers for trailer truck storage. That was approved 7-0. That's over by the softball fields. This is something that they've been using for quite a while for a marshalling yard. We also approved 7-0, amending the special use permit to the State of Alaska Department of Natural Resources Division of Forestry for aeronautical and/or aviation relation activities. And this was approved also by 7-0 vote. We had a discussion regarding public meetings, video conferencing. We did not complete our discussion. That will be carried on to another meeting. Basically, the proposition was delete Zoom access, not have it available, people call in on the telephone or show up in person. And there was some discussion that that maybe people are disadvantaged, such as planning and zoning, if they're strongly encouraged, recommended, maybe even required to come for conditional use permits to talk. If they can't make it, sometimes a Zoom is better than a telephone or a no-show. So we will see the light of that again. And then we had a discussion item again regarding disposal options for Tract A Parkview subdivision, which we discussed tonight. And we left it to the city manager for a broader discussion. Evidently, there's the prospect of a private entity developer, individuals unsure who they are, to perhaps indicate interest in this property. If such an indication is even thought about, and now that it's out in the public, we most certainly have to have a proper appraisal of the property, so we know the value of the property that the citizens of Kenai own, and we can make a better decision knowing the value and what we are about to do with the property. We set a Board of Adjustment hearing for the 31st of May at 5 p.m. And the next meeting, the Planning and Zoning meeting is 5/11, and our next meeting is a week from today, which is the 18th. Did I have that right, Madam Clerk?
You do. Yep. City
Okay.
Council meeting on the 18th, P&Z
Yes.
on the 25th.
Thank you. And also there was discussion about in the manager's report concerning our bluff erosion project. And there's strong possibility that there's a quarry over by Soldovia that we can use some of the material for our riprap for the boulders. And the yield is not, the yield is well, how to describe it loosely. What we want for the main bolstering is boulders that two of them would fit in a side dump. And if you blast a rock face, and you have to blast a lot of it to get those size boulders, there's a loss of efficiency. But they're going to evaluate geologically the prospect, and the thought is that if there is waste product, it can be used for other borough projects, and most certainly the folks over in Soldovia can use it also for their small boat harbor and other. So it's in the process of being looked at. If we can use borough, if we can use borough facilities, that will help our in-kind contribution, and it's a win-win for the city of Kenai, for the borough, and for the citizens of Soldovia. The waterfront development plan, I was out of state, but I understand 3 conceptual plans were presented, and there'll be more information forthcoming. Did anybody from here go, or could you tell me more than I know? Yeah, just a little bit of what was discussed. I didn't have access. One of you, just 10,000 foot view.
Well, they came up with 3 different plans, and then we all voted on which one was our favorite and or what we did or did not like in each one. And one was more of just a park, and one had homes and stuff involved, and the other one was a little more commercial. You agree? But they were all very nice. Yeah.
So they'll all be evaluated and presented in the future. This process is not done, correct? Yeah. And
Yeah. So I think the one of the 3 that was the winner, they were going to use that for the backbones and try to incorporate what everybody liked out of the other 2, and come back in the end of the summer, early fall with the one master plan, basically. Sure. So. It was a good exercise. I mean, it had everybody thinking, so it was nice.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea when we have an opportunity such as down on the waterfront that the community gets together and discusses it. I mean, a lot of it's other people's property. It'd be kind of like a lion and a tiger sitting down with a lamb voting on what's for dinner. But you have to be careful in that way. But a robust public debate, I think is healthy. And then also the city manager talked about the the appropriation from our legislature down there, approximately $6.5 million for us. And Machicki is going to be on the radio tomorrow. He may or may not speak about it, but I think more work has to be done to secure those dollars, and that's the most charitable construction I can put on without overrunning my headlights. And that ends my comments. And again, thank you for you guys chirping up and pitching and taking time to make good decisions. And I'm really proud of you. You too, Jeff.
Anybody have any questions? So I have one that I was at the council meeting last week, and so when we were talking about the Zoom meeting thing, when I sit at home and watch the meetings, I end up watching it on YouTube. Right. And I think YouTube, and then if you needed to call in, you could do that, and you could scrub Zoom still, I think, and still be able to look at it and still be able to, I guess the council people wouldn't be able to look at you in the eye, maybe. That might be the difference, but that might be an option too down the line.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be part of the discussion, Jeff. And it's just a matter of, what people accommodate themselves to. I think Zoom you can do in real time. Yeah. The other you cannot. Yeah. And that's the downfall, if I could use that word, of that particular application. But we'll be discussing it some more. The big thing is to get citizen involvement, get people commenting, and feeling confident that they can show up even in person or electronically, and their voices will be heard and considered. And as we accommodate ourselves to this technology, I think the public process is better served.
Is it just a cost issue? Is that why they want to get rid of it?
It was a privacy thing too, wasn't it?
Well, not necessarily, because evidently the way, and again, I listened in on the telephone. I didn't have Zoom where I was. But I think the cost is not a problem. Now, am I correct, Madam Clerk? It's maybe other issues of managing it.
I'm not qualified to speak. I didn't attend the council meeting.
Okay.
I haven't been part of these discussions.
Yeah. My understanding is that there was a cost initially when we did this. And the negative of that cost has perhaps been eroded because the Zoom is used in other ways, and we can how can we say, buckle ourselves on to that dollar amount, that commitment that's been made to whoever manages the Zoom, and so there shouldn't be that much of a cost to the city. And if I'm wrong, I can be called out in the meeting. But that's what I got from listening on the telephone.
Commissioner Halstead.
Yeah, I think having that as a resource, just even if we don't use it on our every single meeting, but that we use it just a little bit is enough that qualifies it. I think it's definitely a sign of the future and the way things are going to maintain. I think definitely with the COVID pandemic kind of forcing that on everyone, everyone's now familiar with it, and it's not so much of an unknown and a vague thing. And I know, in my environment, I use it literally all day long, every day. But we're a Teams shop, and I know that's what the state of Alaska is all switched to Teams, both with their teleconferencing and all that. So it's potential. It's just like Zoom, but it's a Microsoft product that the city of Kenai automatically pays for when they buy Office. Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Teams comes with it free. So if we are spending money on something, we should go with definitely a standard that everyone's familiar with, and it is a very, very secure application, which I think is another issue why people get away from Zoom.
Yeah, Zoom has, how can we say, foreign influence in its etymology.
Yeah, I don't want to get too nerdy on you. I try to keep.
Yeah, I don't have any tinfoil on today, but and then also comment was made about people being able to hear testimony, like these little bricks that we have. Maybe if we could put microphones, directional microphones, and people could lean into it, it could be heard. I improvidently I was down at a high school reunion and had a peanut gallery with me while I was on my cell phone, and evidently I got an urgent text from the clerk saying you can be heard. Well, my little iPhone sitting in northern Illinois had better sound quality than what we provided here. So lesson learned, and I will be more discreet. And if I do that ever again, I'm not going to serve beer to my buddies. And that ends my comments.
I would echo that. When you try to listen to those meetings live, those microphones really don't pick it up very well at all, so.
And if I just may add, yeah, and you guys, by Title 29, you're our partners in all of this, okay? And you see things that we don't, and we rely on your recommendations. Just like tonight, if you don't feel comfortable about doing something, need more information, speak up, and so it shall be. And that's how I view it anyway. Thank you.
All right. J2 Borough Planning, Commissioner Fikes.
Had a meeting on Monday, and it was a full agenda. We started off the night with election of officers. We elected Jeremy Brantley out of the Sterling area to our vice chair position. As I stated before, Robert Ruffner stepped off the commission and was hired on by the borough as their director. And so they're currently the chair of the commission right now is a snowbird, and so he's looking to be taking off most likely or doing Zoom, so that duties would fall on Jeremy, the vice chair. So once we got those remedied, we moved on to our building setback permit resolution, and we approved that one, and we moved on to a sewer easement vacation to remove a 20-foot sewer easement by the Fort Raymond subdivision in the Seward area, and that one was approved. And then we had another right-of-way vacation, and that one was in the paper Birch Lane, and that one took up quite a bit of testimony. And what occurred there is we had a contractor that was given some information by his client and ran with it and put the potential foundation and everything right smack dab in the middle of the easement. And so they were trying to make adjustments the best way they could. And then the borough was tasked with not trying to set a precedent, so everybody was kind of walking a tight line on what was our expectation and what could we do. And so ultimately, looking at all aspects of it, we did allow the right-of-way vacation to go through. And I mean, the contractor's taken on the burden already of trying to remedy the situation. It's going to cost him quite a bit of money, but not as much as if he had to yank everything out. But anywho, they decided to approve that one, and then we looked at a conditional use permit in the Kenai River Keys area, and what we were looking to do there was a property owner wanted to extend his chain link fencing to discourage folks using the public access easement from coming onto his property. And so there was a little bit of discussion on that, and what that looked like is, you know, I've been doing this for years and years, and by golly, why are you going to put a fence up so I can't get through there? I got a 20-foot car, and I got a boat, and I got to have some turnaround. And so the property owner was just flexing his right as the new property owner. And so, again, there was some discussion on both sides, but ultimately we allowed the fence to go through on that habitat protection area. And then we looked at, and again, and the reason why I brought that up is because a lot of people, and staff, attorney included, was land use and property rights. So there was, you had to stay, again, inside the boundaries and try not to stray too much in the discussion in the weeds on that. And again, setting precedents. So it seemed like a simple deal, but it turned into a bigger discussion. So it was kind of interesting to hear the feedback from both sides of it to navigate forward to the best possible resolution. Pushed us on to our conditional land use permit modification in the California Beach area. We had this one before, and it was for a gravel pit permit, and that one went through. It was a no conflict there. And then that took us over to an ordinance for funds for the land trust. For a project to conduct soil investigations and land planning on 100 acres. And that was in the Cooper Landing area. They wanted to set aside 100 acres for future recreational use. And so we went ahead and approved that. And then we looked at an ordinance authorizing a 3-party agreement and real property lease with the Verizon and Alaska Pipeline for some cell tower stuff. And that one was approved. And then we took a look at an ordinance authorizing the emergency harvest of spruce bark beetle impacted forest lands. And that one was approved. They were looking to amend to include changes for proposed. So the Cooper Landing Advisory Board had come up with some suggestions, and so they were looking to include those in their spruce bark beetle mitigation plan. And so we took those into consideration. We added it onto that ordinance, and we ultimately approved it with their blessings. And then that took us on to a resolution classifying certain parcels of borough-owned and managed land in the Point Possession, Nikiski, Kenai, Happy Valley, Sterling, Funny River, and Cooper's Landing. And then what that was is the infamous almighty once-a-year type thing. The borough picks out a bunch of land and says, well, how do you want to classify it? And everybody jumps up and says, well, wait a minute, is it residential? Is it commercial? And at the end of the day, it could be both. And everybody's like, what? But in order for the borough to get rid of it, they must classify it. Once they sell it, it could be commercial, it could be residential, it could be anything. And so everybody scratches their head. And so for 4 hours, the commission must go through this 4-page docket and decide whether we want to let it go, whether we want to hang on to it, whether we want to reclassify it. And again, you scratch your head because administration tells you at the end of the day, it means nothing. It's sold, and then they do what they wish with it. So that was the takeaway I got from it, but 4 hours of listening to it, we decided to pull from the sale a parcel in a parcel in the Cooper's Landing area that was shown to have been a past landfill, and so that was helpful. There was some folks that came up and testified that back in the 40s and 50s, it wasn't just a garbage disposal, it was a potential military disposal site, and so these guys actually had as-built and other documentation that they brought forward that was able to carry on. So that's what they said, as these folks are getting older and pass away, it's important to have these discussions and these topics, and so that people can testify in Zoom or however, because as the night proceeded on, there was a lot of folks that brought forth some of that discussion about, well, this is my parents' old cabin that's dilapidated, why would you want to give away that property or whatever. So we voted on the one in Sterling, and then there was 2 in Nikiski, waterfront property out on the peninsula that, by golly, we live it out in Nikiski. We don't want any zoning, but we don't want you to give away a waterfront property and have everybody come in and put condos on it. So that was what we heard, and that was what we said. Don't develop it. So took it off the chopping block. That's all I got.
Any questions?
No, there's none in Kenai. K Beach and Shahansky. That's the closest I got.
All right, we're going to move on. J3, Administration, Mr. Foster.
Thank you. I'll be brief. For the next meeting on May 25th, we now would have 3 items with the Boys and Girls Club conditional donation to be considered on that date as well. We have a rezoning application and a vacation of easement action approval as well. And that's all I got.
Vice Chair Dothett, do you have a question for Mr. Foster? Or didn't you? Oh, okay, gotcha. Oh. All right, anybody else have any questions for Mr. Foster? All right, we'll move on. No informational items. Our next meeting is on the 25th. Commissioners' comments and questions. Commissioner Woodard.
I love seeing green grass and leaves.
Commissioner Halstead.
None, thank you.
No, you're talking. You got to have something to talk about, huh?
I appreciate everyone being here, and thank you for the treats for our work session as well. I thought it was very informative. I look forward to doing additional work sessions, and I definitely think we just kind of scratched the tip of the surface. Very much looking forward to seeing how we can continue to work and be a better team. So thank you.
Absolutely. Commissioner Fikes.
Yeah, I just echo the same comments, having sitting up here for a while, having to see how the input of the commission, the council, and the public brought together through work sessions can actually result in some of these issues and complaints being changed and turned over to actual code changes and/or conditions, and having examples put forward so we're not left to scratch our head and, you know, like you say, using the tools at our disposal, but having somebody guide us as to what those tools might be is hugely beneficial. I know some of us up here haven't been able to get to the planners commissions trainings that some of us have, so we've had those opportunities, so we have those tools in our toolkit, but getting reminded of them by the attorney and administration is hugely helpful. And thank you for the clerk for guiding us through these things as we get going, so appreciate that. And the food was great.
Vice Chair Dothett.
Just thanks, and every time we do one of those, I learn something new. I did tonight, and I think we made a little bit of headway on those, and I think, you know, using our judicial meeting tonight went well, and I hope we can tend to do that on those more sticky topics more often. I think it'll help us in the long run.
I would agree, and I'll just say that I think it was nice, two of our more vocal testifiers from the last meeting that showed up for the work session, yeah, shows that they were really, truly engaged in it, so I like that. Vice Mayor Glendenning.
Yeah, just one closing comment. I think what we learned tonight, it's important not to necessarily be driven into decisions by an artificial timeline. What's important is that we get it right. And sometimes you have to take time to make time, get it right. And I appreciate just taking a breath, and even when you went in an adjudicative recess, just to talk among yourselves and get your ideas straight, or how we're doing with the land donation. These are all things that are positive for your group, and we benefit on the council from your more in-depth discussions, and thank you for doing that.
Very good. And with that, all the business complete. The meeting is adjourned.